Well, hello, and thank you for being here. We appreciate you taking the time from a beautiful day outside to come inside and be with us and listen to Hallie. I am Monica Galvan. I am the Cultural Sites Program Coordinator here at the James Castle House. I've been here for a year now. And today we have Lavona Andrew, who is doing ASL interpretation, and of course, Hallie Maxwell. I'd like to give an introduction to the James Castle House for anybody unfamiliar with us. The James Castle House celebrates the life and work of American artist James Castle, and it does this through exhibitions, community programs, through the residency program, and conservation of historic spaces where Castle lived and worked for over 4 decades. The James Castle House is a program of the Boise City Department of Arts and History, which offers many other services, including public art, history programs, archives, cultural grants, and care and conservation. And I want to thank the city of Boise for its ongoing support and for remaining committed to our work at the Arts and History Department. Before I move on, I'd like to acknowledge the broader history of the land that the James Castle sits on today, the James Castle House, excuse me. We recognize the ancestral, cultural, and traditional and unceded territories of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Northern Paiute people whose land this site sits on today. And the room where we're sitting in displays our current exhibition. This exhibition is Where Art Begins, the People and Places of the Historic Artist Home and Studios program. This exhibition places the James Castle House within a broader conversation about preserving the creative spaces of American artists as essential landmarks of the nation's cultural heritage, enduring sources of inspiration. So if you get a moment and you're online, please plan a visit to come here. And after the conversation, we will open up the space so you all can enjoy it for those of you who are here today. Now to the main event. We are excited for Hallie to share with us tonight what her experience has been here at the James Castle House. After the presentation, we will have a question and answer period. So we'll ask you all if you have questions in the room, but if you're online, please put your questions on the chat and then we will ask them to Hallie. Hallie Maxwell is a Japanese-American interdisciplinary artist based here in Boise, Idaho. She works with installation, audio, video, drawing, and performance. She earned her master's in fine arts, visual arts from Boise State University in 2024, and her BA in art from California Lutheran University in 2019. She is a recipient of the International Sculpture Center's 2023 Outstanding Student Achievement in Contemporary Sculpture Award. She has participated in Artist in Residence program at Cove Park, Surel's Place, and the Commonwealth, as well as MING Studios. She's done them all locally, right? Yeah. Hallie is a descendant of survivors of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, and her work explores themes of generational trauma, loss, and disconnection from cultural identity. I now leave you with Hallie to share with us about her experience here at the James Castle House. Thank you, Hallie.
Well, great. Thank you all so much for being here. And it's so great to see so many familiar faces. Let me know if you can't hear me in the back, because I tend to be more of a kind of a low talker. So if at any point you can't hear me, just raise your hand in the back and I'll try to project more. I want to say thank you to the staff at the James Castle House, Boise Arts and History, and the James Castle Archive for your support during my residency. It's been so great getting to know you all. And it's been a really wonderful experience to get to work and live in this historic building. It's been a privilege to be influenced by James Castle. I believe he is one of the best examples of a beginner's mind, which is a concept from Zen Buddhism. And I was introduced to the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind during my first open studio here, actually, because some of you might know Lou. He's a regular at Surel's place. He gave me the book to read after looking at my artwork. So the book begins with the quote, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." So I find myself wanting to return to this beginner's mind in my art, and that kind of thinking pattern I had as a child. And so often I find that I'm able to get there through experimenting with materials and trying new media. And so when I first arrived here in February, we had our first winter snow. And so I made this work, which is in the studio here, in these two images, installed in the beams above. And so what I did was I took snow from outside and I placed it upon this calligraphy scroll, and I put ink upon that. Next. And so this is the process here with the snow outside and the ink and snow on paper. And so I found that as the snow melted, it would stay in these little, the ink would stay where these chunks were. And so in the piece, there's sort of these dots of where that snow was. And you'll be able to look at this closer when you go into the studio. And so this is not the first time that I've used calligraphy paper in this way, but it's the first time I've used snow as material on it. And I've been interested in using materials like calligraphy paper because I'm interested in using traditional Japanese materials, but not using them in a traditional way. So in a way, I'm talking about not knowing the Japanese language, but using different materials to communicate my experiences. At this time too, I was filming the space a lot and looking at the light as it moved inside the space. And so this is a still image, but the videos were so slow that you could hardly see the light moving. But I kind of noticed after watching them for a long time, once you see that movement, you kind of can't stop looking at it. So kind of jumping ahead in time, but this was in the middle of my residency where I taught a wire weaving workshop. And so I taught the participants how to weave these wire baskets. And so there's some examples on the side there of what they made. And basically it's a process similar to crocheting in a way. And it's something that I taught myself to do during the pandemic by looking at Ruth Asalva's sculptures. And so this was my first time teaching the wire weaving, and it was a lot of fun. I was really excited to see what everyone made. Okay, so now kind of going back in time towards the beginning of my residency, I began to make crocheted pieces out of scrap fabric. And so I would cut the fabric into strips and then tie them together to make yarn. At this point, I wasn't totally sure where I was going in this direction, and it felt more like an intuitive work. But I think one of the reasons why I was influenced to work in fibers again was by living and working in the same space. So I kind of began to think of the space as both an exhibition space in the studio, but also a decorated domestic space. And I'll show you more examples of how that kind of grew over time. And then this was another early test that I did where I took one of my crocheted pieces with ink on the wall and I wiped it on the wall. And it was kind of like cleaning, but also doing mark making with the ink. And I remember, because we do like weekly check-ins, me and Monica, she came in for one of them, and I think this piece was behind her the whole time. And then she turned around and she was like, oh. So it was just kind of a fun moment. But then later I took this piece down and kind of reimagined it, repainted the wall, and then I put this piece on the same wall. And so this is another crocheted piece where I was dyeing the fabric and crocheting it. And with this one, I also painted its shadow onto the wall. And so it's been really fun during my open studios to point out to people that I painted it on the wall, because quite often people think it's the actual shadow, just because of that blue color that we associate with shadows, especially in paintings. So up until this point, I made the decision to not think about any particular castle works or processes. And I wanted to be inspired by the space and the place itself, like things like how the light comes in, and having a similar view to what castle would have had. And then also even some of my dreams influenced my work. And so this time I really wanted to let myself stay intuitive with my work and not get too worried about the conceptual part of the work, so it wouldn't stifle the process, and just make as much as I could. Because I knew that as soon as I got Castle's artworks into my mind, they were going to influence all my work moving forward. And that is what happened. So this was when I went to the James Castle archives. And my favorite thing in the archives was this bin of scrap fabric, twine, and curling ribbon. And so I spent a while just digging in there, and I could have spent much longer. There's just so many things to find in there, and like men's ties. And so basically what these were used for is that Castle would bundle up his artworks and then tie them up. And so after going to the archives, I kind of had this like realization of like, oh, this is why I'm working in scrap fabric in this way. And then also when I went to the archives, I became really intrigued by this intense blue that he was using in some of his pieces. And so I just kind of couldn't get that out of my mind. And I think I asked at the time what the colorant was, and they didn't have the answer for me. And I was thinking more, and I kind of remembered that I saw something in this small room. But I went to the reuse market sometime afterwards that, and I found this bottle of liquid bluing. And I was like, oh, this logo looks very familiar. And I think it might be the same bottle that is in the small room. So I came back here, and it was like really close to closing. And I was like, let me in, Sam. I need to check this, if this bottle is the same. And it was. And so then I started using the bluing in my work. And so what laundry bluing is is it's a concentrated blue pigment, and you use a couple drops of it in your laundry when you're trying to whiten white fabric that is yellowed. So it's kind of counterbalances that. But when you use it in excess, it's this very beautiful bright blue. So it was very readily available in Castle's time. Today, a little bit less so, but you can still buy the same brand that he used, Mrs. Stewart's. And you can find it mostly these days in hardware stores because they use it for detecting plumbing leaks. And I thought it was kind of interesting in my research about bluing that they've kept the same Mrs. Stewart's image, but at one point they tried to change her to make her look nicer, and that but then it didn't work out. People didn't buy as much, so everyone trusts the stern old Mrs. Stewart. So I started dyeing fabric with this, and then in the same fashion using those strips and crocheting them. And so this is a piece where I took the bluing strips and then also denim influenced by Castle and other materials like lace and chiffon, and a lot of it is kimono scraps as well. And so I started to think more about how the kitchen is connected to the studio. And so, and I started to see the objects in those spaces as part of my kind of exhibition space. And so I started to crochet pieces that would go over some of them, like this. The one on the left is the clock in the kitchen, and then underneath the sink pipe, I made a cover for that. And then that kind of expanded more into making paper pieces as well, for like on the fridge on the side of the kitchen, and then in the little space between the backsplash, there's a little wall in between that there and the shelf. And so this is another piece that I made with the bluing on calligraphy paper. And I made this piece outside with rocks on it, so you can see the indentations where the rocks were. And then also from the archives, I became interested in how Castle used curling ribbon a lot in his pieces as the kind of binding agent for some of his constructions. I didn't realize until I saw the pieces in the archive that was curling ribbon, because I think in so many images, especially you don't see that sheen that they have. But I thought it was just very interesting how he used it, and it was very well done the way he leads the eye with these different colors. So behind this piece, I rubbed bluing onto the wall. And I had a dream that if I had a needle big enough that was curved, that I could punch through the wall and put the curling ribbon through the wall. So I figured out how to do that the next day by putting the ribbon in the wall. And so I think the next step, there we go. A little example of the curling ribbon. I think it's only that green part, but there's a lot of other ones where he used a lot of reds and blues and pastel colors. And so I also became interested in Castle's transcriptions, where he would copy things like the labels of packaging or newspaper. And so he would likely know what their origin is, but not necessarily know specific context of details like text. So I began to think about how can I copy in order to understand. And I first began to think about that I could copy language since I don't know Japanese, but then I kind of realized that I was already sort of doing that in an indirect way with my scroll pieces, like with the snow. So then I started to think about what are other types of communication that I don't know, but I can learn in my own way. So I looked to my great-grandmother for inspiration. And this is a picture of her. She, I don't know how old she was there, like 4 or 6 maybe. So this would be in the 1910s. And she was born in Los Angeles, Little Tokyo, in 1912. And she learned how to do traditional Japanese dance as a child. And so then eventually she moved to Japan, grew up for the rest of her childhood there, and then went through the experience of surviving the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. And so what you see in this image is she's wearing a certain costume, which is for dancing, and it is for the Shiokumi dance. And so I have this doll that's in my studio now because I like to get objects sometimes to help me think about my work, and so this has been kind of helping me think through some things. So this is a Shiokumi doll, and a Shiokumi is a woman who hauls seawater in buckets to turn into salt. So she has a yoke, and then the 2 buckets are on the bottom there. And so this final piece that I'm going to show you is in its early stages of development, and I'm excited to continue this after the residency. It's kind of something that, as I keep working on it, it kind of keeps expanding, and I think about doing different parts of it. So I'm excited to eventually do that. So from this, I decided to learn the dance, and but instead of using salt buckets, I have replaced them with tape recorders. On one of the tapes, I'm reciting sections of an interview that my great-grandmother did. I was recently given by my family this transcript of the interview that I didn't know about until recently, where one of her students interviewed her about her life, about her experiences with the atomic bombing, her early days, and then her life and retirement afterwards. And so on the other tape recorder is music of the dance. So there's a lot of things I look forward to developing over time, and one is costume, as you saw the costume that my great-grandmother wearing on the doll, because I think there's a lot of the dance, as I've learned through trying to do it, that is informed by the sheer volume of cloth and restriction of legs and just the movement of the cloth and the arms. And the other is music. So I'm interested in thinking about different ways to have that music instead of a direct recording of the score. So I'm also not certain at the moment if this work will be a performance that you see in person, or if it's a video performance that's part of a longer piece, more narrative piece. So my last influence I'll talk about is of Castle's. It's his books, and I was interested in how he would kind of write his own symbols, and that he could understand but not necessarily are decipherable to someone else. you might be able to figure it out, but it was mostly for him. And so from this, oops, let me go back. Sorry, I never use not a Mac, so I'm trying to figure it out. Do this. Do I have? I'm just gonna click it. Okay. I thought I made it through without any technical difficulties, but it's always got to come at the end. So, okay, where did I leave off? So I decided to make my own choreography chart of the dance. And so I made these symbols that would actually help me figure out how to learn the dance, but also become their own kind of communication. And I've, there's kind of a lot of small things that I keep on discovering about the dance. So I anticipate that there's going to be a lot of things like this choreography chart that are going to change. But then there's also just little things that I'm noticing, like yesterday I realized the doll has one of her sleeves off purposely, and I don't yet know the answer of why that is. But I kind of like not knowing. And I think that's one of the things that I like the most about Castle's work is, so quite often I found if you ask the staff here or at the archives, what did he do to do blank? Like what tool did he use to puncture into the cardboard? We kind of don't know, so they'll honestly say, I don't know. And I find that refreshing. I really like it. I think we live in an age of such immediate information. And so that kind of itch of not knowing gets immediately scratched, but it's not necessarily satisfying to know the answer right away. So I kind of find it to be a gift to be left for a bit in frustration of not knowing. So I'm gonna end this talk with two passages from the interview of my great-grandmother that I'm still kind of trying to find answers for in terms of what to do with them, and kind of how to package them in either a performance or video. But I just appreciate them alone as quotes as well. So I'll share them with you. So the first one, she's talking about how later in her life she taught dance. And this is her talking about teaching older people how to dance. And she spoke in a different way than me, so we'll see how my reading goes. But I tell them, concentrate, don't think about nothing, just only the dance in your mind. If you dance in your mind, you always feel young. Even me, sometimes I get tired. I don't even have the pep to stand up. But when I watch them, I'm really proud. And sometimes I think I'm gonna cry. You know, old people are dancing. Young people have pep. Old people go slow, but they are the same inside. And then I have another quote that was at the conclusion of her interview, where she said, "My life is long, so this is not very important to you, but that is me. Born in America, raised in Japan, then the big atomic on me. And then I come here and start working. And then I remember when I was young, I learned the dance. So I thought, oh, maybe I forget about everything, bad things. If I dance again, I become happy. So I think this is a good for me. So that's why now I keep teaching and dancing. So anyways, that's then. Thank you.
Well, now, does anybody have any questions in the room? I'm gonna check and see if there's any questions online, but we'll take questions. Hallie will
They
take
go had a
questions.
very fast hand.
Well, thank you for the talk and all the review of your work. You have given us like a chronological, I guess, the adventure of your work in terms of process. The first one shares a different process in the second one. But at the beginning, you mentioned that sort of not your intention, but you carry a certain motivation to dig into the darkness areas to find about self or true self or wondering about it, not maybe who you are or something like that. So I wonder if you could talk about your work in terms of the process, what this different process that you have explored have taught you or revealed to you about your search about the self. Like the first process, making gives me inclination towards gravity, perhaps. I wonder what this gravity in terms of in relation to materials. That's not the word. The second one, you carry a sort of an intention of tracing the shadow, a sort of a trickster idea. So I just wondering about the processes, what the processes have revealed about your motivation to find out who you are, or what you carry.
That's all. Okay. I want to repeat it for Zoom, but I feel like it's a hard repeating question, but that's why I'm taking notes. So I would say, like, what has the process revealed to you in terms of finding out about herself?
Yes.
Más o menos.
Yeah. So do you mean like more personally with like the family history, or?
Yeah, like if I see a goal in your work, and I think you have mentioned something that you want to find out yourself with your background. So I wonder how does the process inform you about that question that you're wondering, your different processes.
You always ask really big questions, but so I think like I try to get to that history in different ways with different media, like with working in dance, I'm trying to look more within my body for not necessarily memories, but maybe kind of memories that have been passed down to me. Not necessarily that I would know how to do the dance, but trying to think of like if there's other things that might arise as I'm doing it. Yeah, so I don't know if I quite answered it.
You did your best. I think you guys could have a conversation later.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
You explored several different kinds of mediums. Did you have a favorite? It kind of sounds like the performance of the dance and what that represents for you, even though it's not complete. That seemed like a really important part of your journey here.
Yeah, I think I'm the most interested right now in the performance, and kind of in general with my practice, I sort of jump around from different media, and I sort of get obsessed with one thing, and then as soon as I've kind of done enough repetitions of that thing, then I move on to the next. So it's kind of hard for me to say that I have a favorite, because it's not, I have a favorite at a time, but I'm never committed to one material or process.
And they're just starting to work it out, but when you talk a little bit about how the taper work, like will those be playing simultaneously? That's one another, like is that part of the score of when you talk about
The question being asked is about explanation about tape recorders and how those will be used as she moves forward with her dance.
Yeah, so currently they're both on at the same time in these first iterations that I'm doing. And the interviews kind of spaced out to different parts of the dance though. And what I've done so far in the video is I've put 2 microphones above the tape recorders so that I could get each of those sounds. Of course, it's going to kind of catch both of them, but then I can kind of bring one up and bring one down later in editing.
you think you'll do something with that sound, like connected with the sound? I'm just like thinking about like ocean water into salt and like what that transformation.
Wondering if, yeah, it is what it is, right? They're wondering if the sound will be transformed into anything, thoughts of salt and water, ocean sounds come to mind.
It's certainly a possibility at this point. I haven't quite settled on any one thing yet. And also I'm still trying to decide if it's what the background is, or if it's some performance to do at a certain site as well. So there might be natural noise as well as noise in the tape recorders.
I'm curious to hear more about, you talked about the exhibition space and the studio space and the domestic space all kind of blended together, and how you're thinking about that, how that's influencing your decisions.
Curiosity of studio space / exhibition space that Hallie presented.
Yeah, I suppose I first started thinking about it because I was kind of noticing in these first open studios, at least, that it was kind of became a nothing space, where it was sort of like, oh, you're not really supposed to look there, even though it's part of it. And there's some decorations that are like interesting in there, but I just felt like, especially as I started to kind of consume the space with pieces on all the white walls, then I start to kind of wonder, well, why am I only sticking to these places that have been defined for me to exhibit in? And why not start to make things for these objects? And also, I was being influenced a lot by my dreams of the time. And I had a dream about making like a scarf for a snowball. And so then I thought about, oh, what if I made like these kind of like cozies for these different objects?
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the site density that you're doing and other ones that you experienced before? Especially with, like, I know with me with the site density that you get some influence by the artist James Castle. And did you have this before in your life as an artist, that you get influence from other sources, or it's just a new experience for you to be in a space that you are kind of meditating with everything, every corner of the history, and trying to make something in conversation with that?
like I should just type them in.
Yeah.
They're wondering about this experience versus other experiences in other residencies, but also the influence of James Castle, and if that has been something that you have done in previous experiences. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I've done a few other residencies, and I found that no residency is alike. There's a lot of different factors that lead to that, whether it's the duration. This is the longest in like living in a space residency that I've had. I just finished the Commonwealth residency last fall, and that was 6 months. And so that was a very long amount of time, but it was a studio residency. And so that was in a cohort as well. So that really changed that residency for me. So that one was all about making those connections with people. And this residency was more about really getting that time to work. And it was a little different though, because I'm from here, so I know a lot of people here, so I would invite them over to the studio. So it wasn't quite as, I think, as solitary as maybe it can be for some of the residents here, not knowing people. And this, I think this is the most that I've really put my work in the context of another artist. And I did a short studio residency at Surel's place. So with that one, I had some influence just because of like, I could feel her presence in the space. But I wasn't necessarily looking at her works and trying to pull ideas from her works in the way that I did for this one. And I think it's mostly because of the time and getting to go to archives, and work just changed so much when you get to handle it and look at it not in a frame.
You opening by talking about going through James Castle, kind of like a beginner's mind, and various times you mentioned working off intuition and sort of resisting yourself conceptually. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about if there were, through the process of the making that you did here, rituals, practices, approaches, whatever that kind of enabled you to resist deliberate thinking or to enter that beginner's mind more thoroughly.
Just typing. Oh, you're typing. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I can quite define like what rituals I have, other than just making myself get into the work and trying new materials and letting myself fail with those. And I feel like you said something else. I'm trying to think back to. Oh yeah, about intuition. So I basically a year ago, I graduated from my M.F.A. program, which is very heavy in trying to conceptualize your work and write about your work, which is amazing. But kind of since then, I've been trying to figure out like what kind of artist am I outside of academia. And I remember one of the feedback I got from my thesis show was that it didn't seem very intuitive, which was kind of interesting because I felt like all my work was intuitive, but I think it was just really just time of developing the works so they kind of become something else. So I think, and I haven't had that too much in my head of like, oh, your work's not intuitive or something, but I've just kind of wanted to make sure that didn't get in the way of me just making work.
Have one online, if you will answer this. Okay. Jan, who's online, asks how James created, can you read that word for me? Incessantly created. Has that had any impact on how you explore materials and ideas during your residency?
Yeah,
Kind of.
I think definitely at the beginning of the residency when I didn't really allow myself to think too conceptually about things. My first night of being in the studio, I decided to not bring that many materials, like maybe just some paper. And I wanted to kind of be forced to work with whatever was in the studio, because there's always little odds and ends that people leave from the residency before you. And so I wanted to be forced to work in new materials that weren't my set, the ones that I had. So I was like, I had to do something with this printing press, because there's a printing press in here, and be silly if I didn't use it at some point. So I was like, oh, well, I guess there's tinfoil, and I was like, can I do like a kitchen lithography? And I didn't have the right materials, so it didn't work out. But then I started to do different things with the tinfoil and putting ink on it, so that became something else. And I think just anytime I see white space, I just instantly want to fill it. So I saw that back wall, and I was like, well, I just gotta start pinning stuff up, and it doesn't matter if it's not good, or just start making and then take it down, so then I can feel the need to do it again.
Thank you, Hallie. Thank you all. Thank you for logging on. If you haven't been here, I'm talking to you all on Zoom, please come in. For those of you who are here in the room, we're gonna continue on, so please stay, mingle with each other. We have some refreshments, and Hallie has also some items if you are interested in purchasing. She has a little sheet of paper with pricing, but we have some snacks for you all to enjoy. Thank you.